Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're going to talk about something we all do, something that feels like, the ultimate time suck. Stopping for gas. You pump, you pay, you go. But what if that simple, maybe 5-minute stop could be turned into a critical diagnostic session for your car?
That is exactly the mission today. We've synthesized a lot of guidance on these essential checks. And the goal isn't to make you a full-time mechanic overnight. It's about giving you that actionable, high-leverage knowledge to spot serious issues. We're talking fluids, tires, electrical stuff.
Right, before they become those catastrophic failures or, the really, really expensive surprise repairs nobody wants.
Exactly.
So our deep dive today is focused on just that, maximizing your vehicle safety, its reliability, all with a minimum time investment. We're looking at the big ones: fuel, oil, water, tires, and the battery. And we've structured this to jump straight into the non-obvious stuff, the hacks that, the experts know, but the rest of us often miss.
Yeah.
So let's start right at the pump. Because even just the simple act of fueling has some great little secrets the source material brought up. Have you ever pulled into a station, maybe in a rental car, and you completely blank on which side the fuel cap is on?
Oh, absolutely. We've all done that little dance of shame, pulling up and having to reposition. But there's a simple hack for that. Just look at the fuel gauge on your dashboard. Right next to the little pump icon, you'll almost always see a tiny triangle or an arrow.
Oh, right. I've seen that.
Yeah, and that little arrow points to the side your fuel flap is on. It's a game changer.
That is a genius piece of institutional knowledge. Okay, so now we're pumping. The research we looked at was very, very clear on the first click rule. Why do we need to stop at that very first click? I mean, so many people try to round it up to the nearest dollar.
Right, and it feels harmless, doesn't it? But it's actually preventative maintenance for your car's fuel system. When that nozzle clicks off the first time, it means the tank is full to its designed recommended level. If you try to force more fuel in, you risk liquid gasoline backing up into the vapor recovery system.
Okay, what is that system exactly?
It's a mechanism that's designed to capture all the harmful gasoline fumes before they escape into the atmosphere. It's an emissions thing. So if you flood that system with liquid fuel, you can actually damage the components. And that can lead to, the check engine light coming on or just general inefficiency. So first click and you're done.
Got it. First click. So speaking of safety, let's touch on the most fundamental rule: turning off the engine. We all know it's a legal requirement in most places, but can you just remind us of the critical why?
The why is all about fire prevention. Pure and simple. You're dealing with very volatile fuel vapors. And while the risk is, admittedly low, keeping the engine running introduces all these potential ignition sources. You've got electrical components, a hot exhaust, even static discharge.
So shutting the engine off just eliminates those risks.
It eliminates them during the most vulnerable part of the process. And, it's also a quick environmental win, stops unnecessary idling.
Okay, let's talk about the absolute worst-case scenario at the pump. You're distracted, you grab the wrong nozzle, and you realize you've just pumped gas into a diesel engine, or vice versa. What is the single most important thing you have to do?
Do not start the engine. That is the one single golden rule that can save you thousands of dollars. I can't stress that enough.
And what happens if you do? If you turn that key?
The second you turn that key, you start circulating the wrong fuel through the entire system, through the high-pressure injectors, the fuel lines, the filter. I mean, you contaminate everything. It causes catastrophic damage.
So just stop immediately, tell the attendant, and then what?
Then you need to call a professional.
Yeah.
Roadside service, mechanic. They have to come and drain, flush, and refill the entire system before you even think about turning that key. That moment of just stopping is the difference between an inconvenient tow and, well, a major engine rebuild.
That's a huge difference. And one last safety point here: mobile phones. Why all the warnings about using them at the pump?
It's sort of a twofold issue. First, there's a, let's say, marginal but not zero risk of an electrical current or a static spark from a phone near concentrated fuel vapor. But the bigger danger, honestly, is distraction. You just need to be fully present. You need to be aware of what's going on, making sure the pump shuts off correctly, and also, maintaining awareness of your surroundings for personal safety.
Right. Okay, so that's the tank taken care of. Let's move just a few feet away and talk about what's flowing inside the engine itself. Let's start with coolant or water. Most people can do a quick visual check of the reservoir.
Right. And if the level is low, you top it up. But the critical insight here is this. If you find you're regularly topping up your coolant, you have a leak. And you need to treat that like an immediate problem.
But why is it so urgent? Can't you just keep adding, cheap water?
Because every single time you add plain water, you're diluting the concentration of the antifreeze and the corrosion inhibitors that are already in the system.
Mhm.
And that dilution eventually hurts your engine's ability to handle high and low temperatures. So you're looking at potential freezing in the winter, overheating in the summer, or even internal corrosion. You're trading a cheap leak fix now for a major system failure later.
That makes perfect sense. Okay, let's move on to engine oil and the dipstick procedure. We pull the stick out. The research really stressed what we need to do before we can get an accurate reading.
Yes, you absolutely have to wipe the dipstick completely clean before you put it back in. An engine is constantly spraying oil while it's running. So if you just pull it out without wiping it first, you're just reading residual oil that's been splashed high up the stick. It's not the actual level in the reservoir.
So you wipe it clean, put it all the way back in, then pull it out again to check the level.
Exactly. Check the level between the minimum and maximum lines.
Yeah.
And the warning we had for water applies here too. Use the correct manufacturer-specified oil and absolutely do not overfill.
Why is overfilling so bad?
Overfilling is just a recipe for trouble. The excess oil can get churned up by the crankshaft, which leads to foaming. And when oil foams up, its lubrication quality plummets, which is the exact opposite of what you want your oil to do. And again, if you find you have to add oil regularly, just like with coolant, you probably have a leak or some serious internal wear like worn piston rings.
And this is where it gets really interesting for me. The oil itself can be a powerful diagnostic tool. It tells you about the health of your engine. What should we be looking for, beyond just the level?
We're looking for three things: color, consistency, and smell. Clean oil should be a nice amber or light brown color. Dark or black oil is actually normal. Just means it's doing its job holding on to contaminants. But you need to pay attention if that dark oil is very thick or, like, sludgy. That means maintenance is overdue.
See, I think most people just assume black oil means it's time for a change, but why are things like grit or a gasoline smell a complete game changer?
Because grit, gasoline, or a Milky appearance, those signal a fundamental mechanical failure, not just routine oil exhaustion. For example, if the oil looks milky or frothy, that is a huge red flag. It means coolant has mixed with the oil, which strongly suggests breach, like a failing head gasket.
And if you can feel grit in it.
Yeah, if you rub the oil between your fingers and you feel a gritty texture, that means you have contaminants or even metal shavings in there. That's a sign of serious internal engine wear happening right now.
And what about the smell test?
So if the oil smells distinctly burnt, the oil itself is degraded, probably from the engine overheating. But if you detect a strong gasoline smell in the oil, that's really bad. It means fuel is leaking past the piston rings and into the crankcase. That dangerously dilutes the lubrication, which accelerates wear, and it also increases the fire risk. If you smell gas in your oil, you should stop driving immediately. That's a 5-second diagnosis.
Wow. Okay, let's move from the internals to the only part of your car that actually touches the road, the tires. We all know we need to check the pressure, but the real source of truth for the correct PSI, it isn't the number stamped on the tire sidewall, is it?
Absolutely not. And that's a super common mistake.
Yeah.
The pressure stamped on the sidewall is the maximum pressure the tire can handle. It's a safety limit. The pressure you should actually use is found on a label, and it's usually on the driver's side door pillar. You see it when you open the door.
And that number is specific to the vehicle.
Right. It's calibrated for your specific vehicle's weight and its handling requirements.
And if the pressure is wrong, we know it wears the tires out quicker, but what does it do to the handling?
It drastically compromises it, especially during, a quick maneuver or an emergency brake. Underinflation leads to excessive flexing and heat buildup. And overinflation actually reduces the contact patch with the road, making the ride harsh and less stable. And while you're checking the pressure, you have to do a quick visual inspection. Look for bulges, cracks, things embedded in the tread. And don't forget the spare.
This is where we can go from simple maintenance to some really advanced diagnostics. If we run our hand along the tread, what do those different wear patterns actually tell us about the hidden health of the alignment or the suspension?
The tire wear is like a secret language. It really is. If the outer or the inner edges are worn down, but the center of the tread is fine, that signals chronic underinflation.
Yeah.
The tire is basically sagging. And conversely, if the center tread is worn more than the edges, you're overinflated. It's causing the center crown to take all the load.
What about that weird, wavy or sawtooth feeling you sometimes get? I think it's called feathering.
Yeah, feathering or scalloping, that's a key indicator of suspension or alignment trouble. That kind of wear pattern develops when the tire is rubbing slightly sideways as it rolls, or if your shocks or struts are worn out, causing the wheel to bounce inconsistently.
And if the wear is just localized, like if only one tire looks way worse than the others.
That points to a mechanical issue specific to that one corner of the car. Could be suspension damage, maybe a stuck brake caliper that's dragging on the wheel, or a problem with an alignment setting called camber.
You mentioned alignment settings.
Yeah.
What exactly does camber mean for the average person just looking at their wheel?
So camber is just the angle of the wheel relative to the road if you're looking at it from the front of the car. Imagine the wheel leaning too far in at the top or too far out. When that happens, the tire wears really heavily on just one side. So if you see extreme wear on only one edge of one tire, that's likely a camber issue that needs a professional adjustment.
Okay, that's good to know. Let's move from the friction of the road to the flow of power, the battery. If we have one of the older, non-maintenance-free batteries, there's a very specific fluid rule there, isn't there?
Yes. If you need to top up the electrolyte, it has to be with distilled water. Only distilled water. Using tap water introduces all these minerals that can significantly reduce the battery's efficiency and its lifespan. And, like with all fluids, never overfill it.
Right. And we want to catch a failing battery before that morning when the car just won't start. What are the key signs that a battery is on its last legs?
The signs are usually cumulative. They build up. You might notice the engine crank is slow, kind of sluggish, especially when it's cold. The headlights, or your interior lights, might seem dimmer than usual. Or you might hear that rapid clicking sound when you turn the key.
Ah, yes, that click, click, click.
Exactly. That's the starter solenoid failing to engage because it doesn't have enough power. And then there are the physical warnings, which are just as critical.
What should we look for on the battery itself?
Look for physical danger signs. Corrosion is a big one. That white or blue powder around the terminals indicates a leak and a poor connection. Even worse, look for a bloated or swollen battery case. That swelling is often a sign of internal damage or overheating, and that battery needs to be replaced immediately, even if it's still managing to start the car.
Right, because if your battery is struggling, the whole electrical system suffers, and that compromises simple safety things like visibility. A quick reminder here, make sure your windows are clean. It sounds so basic, but it's critical.
Absolutely. Clear visibility is just non-negotiable. And, let's wrap this up with personal safety at the gas station. It's an exposed place, and we just need to be aware.
So what are the fundamental rules for security while we're at the pump?
It's all about situational awareness. Choose well-lit, busy stations, especially at night. And never, ever leave your keys in the ignition, even if you're just walking 10 feet to the kiosk. And crucially, always lock your vehicle doors. It's a prime opportunity for theft if you're distracted while the pump is running.
So keep your valuables secure, be wary of strangers.
Yep. Pay attention to your surroundings.
Okay, let's circle back to engine oil for a quick technical deep dive that I think delivers some really high-value knowledge. When we talked about adding the correct oil, that usually means choosing a bottle with a rating like, say, 15W30. That sequence of numbers and letters can feel like pure jargon, but it's actually telling us how the oil performs across extreme temperatures.
Right. This rating system is standardized by the Society of Automotive Engineers, or SAE, and once you understand what the two numbers and the W mean, you know exactly what level of protection you're buying. It's a guarantee of performance.
So let's break down that specific example. 15W30. What does that first number, the 15 followed by the W, represent?
Okay, so the first number, the 15, followed by the W for winter, that defines the oil's viscosity, its thickness at low temperatures. This is vital for cold starts. A lower number means the oil is thinner and flows faster through the engine when it's cold, and that minimizes wear before the engine has a chance to warm up. So 15W means it has the flow of a 15 weight oil in cold conditions.
So a lower number is better for cold weather startup protection. Okay, so what about the second number, the 30? That must be for the heat.
Exactly. The second number, the 30, indicates the viscosity at the engine's high operating temperature. This is where the oil really needs to maintain its protective barrier. A higher number here means the oil is thicker and provides more robust lubrication under extreme heat and stress.
That's the aha moment right there. So the rating ensures the oil flows quickly to prevent damage on a cold start, and then it stays thick enough to protect everything once the engine is hot and under stress.
It's a perfectly engineered dual function. And remember, you must always check your owner's manual. The manufacturer has meticulously specified the exact rating your engine needs based on its design and the climate you drive in. Using the right viscosity is truly non-negotiable for engine health.
This has been great. This deep dive has really shown that turning your routine garage stop into a 5-minute safety check fluids, tire wear, electrical health is one of the most proactive and cost-saving habits you can possibly adopt. We've gone from simple fuel hacks to, diagnosing potential head gasket issues just by paying attention.
It's peace of mind through prevention and quick diagnosis. We cover the specifics of what to check once you're standing there at the pump, but let's leave you with one final thought. It connects back to our fuel discussion, but it's about when you choose to refuel.
Okay, so what's the final word on running on empty?
Well, your fuel warning light might suggest you have, a few gallons left, but the widely recommended best practice is to refuel when your tank hits about 1/4 full.
And why is that?
It's because the electric fuel pump actually sits inside your fuel tank, and the surrounding gasoline provides essential lubrication, and critically, it provides cooling for that pump. When you run your tank too low, you force the pump to work harder, and without that fuel around it to dissipate heat, you introduce a totally unnecessary risk of damage from overheating,
Right.
and you can turn an empty tank into a very, very costly fuel pump replacement.
That is the perfect preventative thought to send us off with. Stay informed, stay safe, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.
Please like, subscribe, and get notified.